name is Samira Rafaela and I'm a member of European Parliament since 2019 and I've been the rapporteur on the new EU Pay Transparency Directive. The Pay Transparency Directive is very historic and it's absolutely something to be proud of. The Pay Transparency Directive will make sure that companies on a mandatory basis will give more transparency on how they pay men and women in their company. Unfortunately, in the EU also, we have a gender pay gap of 13% and that is significant, meaning that a lot of women are missing out of money and meaning that they cannot invest in their economic future in the same way we see a lot of men doing. And this is what the Pay Transparency Directive is about. It will give all the EU employees the right to information about their salary, and it will also mean that companies starting with 100 employees will report on their gender pay gap. Companies starting from 100 employees need to report now on their gender pay gap. And it's really important that they report on the gender pay gap so that we can identify where the gaps and the specific problems are in a company. And companies already have that data. They already have the gender disaggregated data available. So it means that they need to merge all the relevant information into a report. And if they find a gender pay gap in their company starting from 5%, they need to undertake measures. The strongest element about the Pay Transparency Directive is that we give all EU workers the right to information. So all EU workers, each individual, can demand information about their salary. And this is really powerful. We really believe that the right to information and the information that an employee will receive will contribute to exploring and finding out about the problem. The main challenge for companies will be to report on the gender pay gap in a way that is transparent and open. So we do expect that this information will be publicly available, and we understand that this can bring difficulties for companies, also reputation-wise. But this is exactly why we say to companies, start with an audit now. Start to explore and find out about the problem of the gender pay gap in your company. But we don't expect a lot of consequences if a company starts to work on it now, or when it's very aware of the issue of the gender pay gap in general in our society. And I can imagine that it will cause certain problems when a big gender pay gap has been found in a company, but at the same time we really need to start repairing it because it's absolutely not a positive contribution to the economic welfare of so many individuals and women in our society. Companies are part of the problem, but they are also part of the solution. When we speak about the topic of women economic empowerment, we really speak about the economic independence of women. In general, gender equality is about the economic independency of women. And the gender pay gap nowadays is causing that a lot of women are dependent, and we want them to be economic independently, because it will mean that women are less vulnerable to other kinds of discrimination and exclusion. So this is why it is very important to work on the essence of gender equality. And I believe that the essence of gender equality is to work on the economic independency of women. The reporting requirements are part of many new legislative texts that we have been working on. Take, for example, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. Take, for example, the Pay Transparency Directive. You see throughout many new legislative texts that reporting requirements are a very important element of it. Because if we don't report, if we don't make companies reporting, then we don't get the relevant information on the specific problem. And we really need to specifically target the problem of the gender pay gap, for example. So therefore, it really starts with reporting. The right to information is also very powerful. Having the information on the gender pay gap in a company is very powerful. And this is not because we want to shame companies. This is also because we want to help companies and to make sure that they get a stronger brand and that they get more happier employees working in their companies. And this can only be beneficial to companies too. Well, the UN Global Compact is already working on the issue of the gender pay gap through, for example, Forward Faster. So a lot of interesting knowledge, expertise, but also tools and instruments that the UNGC is developing for companies to navigate and to work on the specific issue of the gender pay gap. And I think it is a really positive development that we see more companies now following that example, and companies that want to be part of these multi-stakeholder dialogues that the UNGC is also organizing. And it is very important that we work with the good examples and the good practices so more companies will be inspired to do the same. And this is where UNGC is working on and is doing a good job. What I think is really good about the Forward Faster initiative is that targets are involved. So companies can commit themselves to targets, but also commit themselves to this mission to close the gender gap and to work on the gender pay gap. And it also includes relevant information, knowledge, best practices, and tools for companies to work with.